Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Dutchy Gaming, and a new video on my channel going over my initial starter build plans for Path of Exile 2 based on the info that we currently have available. I'm now definitely set on Monk as my starter, and most likely the Invoker Ascendency. I had an idea, since the Quarterstaff and the animations that come along with it look a lot like a double-ended lightsaber, I wanted to make a Jedi or Sith Lord themed character. Now, I'm definitely not the only person who wants to do this. I've seen comments on my videos and on the forums about it. The video is going to go through my planned cosmetics to get the character looking as close as I can, and how the skills and combos I use will work for both bossing and clear speed. I'll go over what areas of the build I think I'll need to invest in to get a good all-rounder. I'm not thinking about specific strike skills at the moment, as we don't have enough information about them or how they work. But what I'm going to do is go through the mechanics I plan to use to boost both my bossing damage and my clear speed. So before we go into my ideas and skills, I just wanted to quickly go through what I plan to have my character looking like in terms of MTX. And I've gone for like a purple chaos themed. The idea being that eventually I think the other Ascendancy might be better for endgame, but I think Invoker looks better for league starting. If anyone's interested, the set I'm using is the Divergence hood, body armor and gloves. The Dark Shard boots, I've got the Divergent weapon effect. My charges are the Stygian crystalline charges. I've got the Violet Flare character effect, but I only set it to level 2. I've got the Master Spellblade portrait as my picture. And then I've also got the Divergence aura effect on one of my aura skills that I'm using. And this is kind of what I plan to use at the beginning. I did want to maybe go like a red themed, but I didn't like the MTX that I had, and I didn't want to spend an absolute fortune. I already had some of these, so I maybe spent 3 or 4 extra 100 points to get the last few items that I needed. And I think this looks really cool. And I think when it gets a Quarterstaff, it's going to look even better, especially with the animations that Monk's going to have. I think it's going to look really, really awesome. So this is what I plan to go with. Thought I'd just cover this very quickly in the video before we move on. So let's dive into the skills and abilities. So if we just start with the Quarterstaff abilities, it looks like there's 2 main ways of boosting clear speed and damage, which is consuming power charges to empower attacks, and killing stunned enemies with a palm skill to add projectiles to your attacks. Looking at the endgame footage, it looks like it's pretty easy to generate power charges. Now, whether that's getting power charge on kill, power charge on crit nodes, or a power charge on crit gem, these are things I need to look at once we get into the game. I'm sure there'll be passives, items, and maybe even an Ascendancy node that has something to do with stun. But the issue I have with the stun mechanic is that it's procced from killing an enemy, which might firstly make it a bit fiddly because it's more skills to use, and it's also going to be pretty useless on boss fights. It also looks like the projectiles have a set course and don't auto-target, so it's not clear if they pierce or not either, so I'm not sure this is worth building around and isn't something I'm going to look at. Extra projectiles is also unlikely to affect your boss damage because I don't think they'll be able to strike the same target, and you still have to be able to kill an enemy to get those projectiles. Overall, I think the power charge buffs look better for bossing, and they look easier to maintain. So if we move on to the bell ability, I think this is something that can really work well in a boss rotation, but probably not so much for clearing because you can't move the bell. We do know that whatever status effects you apply through your attacks into the bell will then go onto any enemies around it. What I need to see, and I'm not sure it was clear from the reveal, is what sort of support gems work in the bell and how the damage is worked out. So if I put damage adding gems into my bell, does it add more damage, or is it all around the damage you use with your skill that hits the bell? So these are things I need to look at. Can you put utility gems in the bell, like increased duration, or maybe add status effects, charges, things like that? These are all things that I need to play around with when the game launches. Like I said, I don't think it's really going to come into a clearing rotation other than really juicy packs, because you'll put the bell down, kill a few monsters, and then that's it. The bell just sits there and you move on and you go on to your next pack. It would be really cool if it had the same interactivity as Hydrosphere, and you can hit or move the bell around so that you can keep it going. Or maybe the cooldown's really, really low and you can just keep dropping the bell in every pack. Like I said, I think it will be a big key to boss damage, especially when you combine it with shock and attacks empowered with power charges. So my idea is to have one skill on the boss that generates shock and power charges. Then when the boss gets immobilized through electrocution or freeze, you drop the bell, you proc Unbound Avatar, which is an Invoker Ascendancy, and then if you've got decent crit chance, you'll also proc Elemental Waves from that same Ascendancy. Now this is all theory crafting, of course, but this is the way I plan to build the character, and the way I want to try and get boss damage is to do it in big bursts, rather than just use skills here and there to chip the boss down. I want to build up all of my buffs, get all the debuffs on the boss, and then have that maybe 5 to 6 second window where we can absolutely chunk the boss down, Then you move away, you stay safe, you build up all your charges again, and then you start again. So it's going to be hopefully a clear rotation I can use on bosses. I do think we're going to be able to maintain power charges on bosses. I'm hoping there's some sort of power charge on crit or some way of generating them. Otherwise, the monk is really only going to be like a clear ascendancy, because a lot of their skills and a lot of their buffs rely on either power charges or stuns. And if you can only get them on kill, it does mean that boss options are quite limited. One decision I will make once I've had a chance to play the game is whether to concentrate on one type of element for damage or go double or try elemental. It's purely going to depend on gear, affixes, and the skill tree. Historically, it's always been better to stack one damage type and element, but both shock and freeze can immobilize bosses, so it shouldn't really matter what you spec into. It's all going to revolve around what is going to be the best way to deal a lot of damage very, very quickly. If that's rotating through different elements, then great. Or if it's better just to spec into lightning or cold, then I'll do it that way. Survivability is definitely something I think I'm going to need to boost on Monk, as at its core it looks a little bit squishy. I'll likely need to invest in Life Leech, as being a Dex intelligence class, it's probably going to be hard to get physical damage mitigation. There does look like there's good potential to run hybrid life and energy shield, especially with the meditate skill, as this doubles your energy shield. But it depends how long this lasts, as there's no way you're going to be able to prop this in the middle of a fight. So if the skill that you're using and your energy shield lasts for 6 seconds, then it's really something that's going to be difficult. However, if it's something that is just forever until your energy shield gets to below its normal threshold, then there's probably going to be ways to leech energy shield so that we can actually make that meditate skill useful. Now, there's obviously extra ascendancy skills we're not aware of, so there's going to be plenty when the game drops to add even more to the arsenal. One interesting aspect is it looks like ascendancy points that grant a skill can be supported with support gems, because this skill will go into your skill bar. Now, it's not clear if you could do it on all skills, but if you can put skill gems into elemental expression, which triggers the waves of damage, this could be great for boosting clear speed, getting single target damage, maybe getting charges, getting life leech. There's loads of different things you might be able to put into this gem because it triggers so often to actually make it really useful. Could you even put an on-crit gem into there and then have that trigger another skill? Who knows? There's loads that we can look into when the game launches. You could end up with an absolute barrage of elemental skills all going off at the same time, which should be a ton of fun. Now, this is obviously only my early framework, but this is how I plan to build the character. If the skill tree comes out early, I might look at a rough starting tree, so I've at least got some idea where I want to go. And it would be nice to get a chance to scope out the entire tree to see if other regions are firstly worth traveling to, or if there's a really strong node that we can't get to, but we could anoint on an amulet. Now, as far as I'm aware, life nodes no longer exist on the tree, which means life will need to come from gear alone. There might be ascendancy points on certain classes that give you life, and obviously there's going to be gems and the things that you slot into your gear to give you life, but overall it's all going to revolve around gearing. This might make the monk a bit vulnerable early on, but I do like this move as it does mean you've got more points to spec into other aspects, such as just going pure damage to go glass cannon, or other defensive or quality of life aspects. So let's talk a little bit more about ascendancies. Now, for all the classes, we've only seen around half the ascendancy nodes available for each class, but in terms of monk, both seem to have a unique identity, which is great. The reason I've gone Invoker is I think it seems, firstly, more new player friendly, so easier to make guides around. It also gives you regular buffs to damage. I'm not sure we'll officially get the rest of the ascendancy skills until they're data mined very close to release, and I want to have a plan ready before then, as I may be busy with work in the days leading up to launch. As I said, I think both monk ascendancies look great. Defensively, Acolyte of Chula looks really strong, and I think there's going to be some great synergies in the class. The combo of defense and attack looks really good. So your spirit turns into darkness for this ascendancy, which can buff both your damage and your defenses. You can also take a node that makes mana leech instant, which means you could take mind over matter for even more sustain to your life pool. Mind over matter essentially makes your damage come from your mana before your life, but it halves your recovery for your mana. But if you can get your leech up enough, you can hopefully sustain your mana pool really, really well. This will just give you a bigger life pool. If you then add in something like a hybrid energy shield life build, you could get to massive levels of life. There's also the option of boosting your max chaos resistance up to help sustain your energy shield even further. However, I do think this is a bit more complex to build around, especially as a league starter, and I prefer the simpler options on the Invoker of pretty much do more damage when various situational things occur. If we do get more info on nodes, I'll obviously plan the character in a bit more depth, But equally, I'm happy going in blind, since even with just the nodes that are revealed, I could definitely get some sort of synergistic build going. I think Invoker also has a chance to give you really big burst boss damage, which I think looks like it might be slightly lacking on the Acolyte. When you combine things like the Bell, Empowered Attacks, Unbound Avatar, Scatter to the Winds, it should give you a really good window for damage. Now obviously the Bell and the Empowered Attacks just come with the Quarterstaff, so you will have these on both Ascendancies. But Unbound Avatar and Scatter them to the Winds could have potential to really increase that burst damage. I will bring out a more detailed video on my starter plans much closer to release. I just want to allow as much information to come through from GGG as possible. I'll also be bringing out daily updates on my progression once we get started, just in case people wanted to play a similar build. That's kind of it for this video, fairly quick one and purely theory crafting, but I'm too excited to not start thinking about all the things we might be able to do with the characters and the skills in the game. Let me know what you're thinking of playing and why, as I'm always keen to see what people are cooking up. As always, thank you very much for watching, take care, and see you in the next one.